to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 44, otherwise known as season 3, episode 8. And I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me yet again, as always, is Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Honestly, the best I've felt in several weeks.
Nice. Cool. See, we have some stuff to talk about, but there's a reason why you feel good, I think.
Yes.
Also with us yet again is John Correa. How you doing, John?
Doing pretty good. You know, just quarantine. Like, not much has changed.
Corona-tine? Is that what we're calling it now? We're all...
I said quarantine, but I guess, I don't know, mumbled. I shouldn't mumble on this. Should enunciate.
We got a special guest this week, and we are going to introduce him now because we want to talk to him. We've got Justin Martell. That's how you say it, Martell?
That's right.
Am I right? Cool. He is a producer who's worked with Troma and Joe Bob and Fangoria. He's kind of done it all. How you doing, Justin?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for killing a little bit of your Sunday. Justin is actually, the three of us, as you all know, are in California. Justin is in New York, which if there's any place that is more locked down than California, it's probably New York.
Well, actually, let me stop you. I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, you're in Georgia right now.
So I'm actually in another, place of interest right now in terms of handling of the quarantine, but for different reasons, as I'm sure you've read.
Yes.
Not that I've been partaking in the opening up, but so nothing's really changed for us. We've just been staying at the house. But basically, I left New York in mid-March because I'd been talking about the whole thing as it was starting here in the U.S. with friends in Italy, friends in China, and they basically said, this whole thing's about to blow up and you should get out of New York. So I first went to New Hampshire, John.
Yeah,
nice.
Saw the folks up there, and then ended up coming down here. I did fly, but there was about 6 people on the flight, so it ended up being, I think, fairly safe. I've been here since.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Okay, so you are actually from New York, or you live in New York?
I live in New York, yeah. I lived in New York for 10 years. I'm from Connecticut originally.
Okay, so I wasn't confused there. Okay, so you kind of head to the hills to go to get away from this thing. Yeah.
I decided I was going to get out of Dodge. I just figured if I'm going to be stuck inside, it wasn't going to be with, in a 1,200 square foot apartment with a farting roommate and all that stuff. So got out of there.
1,200 square foot's a pretty good size apartment for New York, though.
Not when you're in there for 2 months.
True. Very true.
That's true.
Now, see, I have a less than 1,200 foot apartment, but I'm the farting roommate, so I am more than comfortable here.
Yeah, he's the Willem Dafoe of the duo.
Oh, man. I actually started doing that again last night. I had bad flatulence, and every time was just like, hey, Lindsay, that's my impression of William Dafoe in Lighthouse. Want to hear it again?
Let's roll into let's talk a little bit about what we have been doing. Jacob has actually done something cool because he posted on Facebook about it, and share what happened with you and why you're in such a good mood.
All right. Well, when the lockdown started, they closed down all the theaters for obvious reasons, and that hit me twofold because I also worked at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica, so unfortunately that's closed down, and all the theaters are closed down, and I was a regular at movie theaters all over town. Like, I'd go to the New Bev, I'd go to the AMC, I would go to the Alamo. I went everywhere, and this is the longest I've ever been without seeing a movie in theaters, I think, in my entire life. So it has been a little disheartening. But I found out that some of the drive-ins are still open, and there's this one Mission Tiki up in Montclair, which is like 50 miles away. And IFC did something special because, you know, I wanted to see a movie, but I, you know, was interested in genre stuff. So they decided to do kind of they kind of build it as kind of like a grindhousey type of thing. Like they even had like a fake kind of old school newspaper ad for it. So they did these 2 new releases they were doing. This horror movie called The Wretched, and this Australian crime Western, the true history of the Kelly Gang. And yeah, they did it as a double feature, or they're doing it as a double feature this week at the Mission Tiki Drive-In. And I gotta say, after nearly 2 months of not seeing a movie in theaters, it was a religious experience. Yeah, you know, just it was fun, you know, just going out there and like socially distanced watching the movie with some friends. Everyone wore masks. You know, I brought gloves, and yeah, it was just nice to have that kind of experience again. Even though, like, I've only been to a drive-in a couple times, but just to see a movie on the big screen, you know, is just such a relief. And the movies were good too. Like, I've been afraid of witches ever since Wizard of Oz, and I saw that as a kid. So I got a soft spot for horror movies revolving around witches, and I'm not just talking, you know, like casting spells and stuff. I'm talking like real grisly, like they will fucking eat your children witches, and that's pretty much what The Wretched was. Had a bit of a kind of Rear Window vibe to it because it's about this kid who notices his neighbor acting weird, and she's like possessed by a witch, and shit goes crazy. And the other movie, True History of the Kelly Gang, really blew me away because like it had such a great cast. Like Russell Crowe is in it. Like I didn't know that going in, but and it was kind of a one of those kind of like more dreamish period movies, you know, where it's kind of more surreal. Like there were so many weird sequences, and like it had like one of the most out there shootouts I think I've seen in a movie in a long time, but it was so amazing to see on a big screen. And yeah, you know, like I was saying though, you know, it's all about the experience. It just really brought me back, and I'm probably going to go to the drive-in again sooner or later because the good thing is, you know, even though it's far away, like there's no traffic and gas is so cheap, it's like no big deal.
I was about to say, that was a bit of a drive for you, wasn't it? Because we were actually looking into that before we saw you post it, and Lindsay's like, do you want to drive an hour and 45 minutes to go to a drive-in? It's like, whoa, the fuck else are we going to do? Yeah, let's do it.
And for me, it was like 50 miles, 50 minutes. Like like traffic is so minimal. Like
in LA?
Yeah, traffic's so minimal in LA. It's a mile a minute. It's crazy.
They have a few drive-ins open here, and I looked it up, but like they pretty much just have Troll World playing, so I decided to stay in and watch Tubi TV. That's what I've been doing.
Oh, we're huge fans of Tubi. I was actually going through Tubi. There are some really solid titles. I saw Peeping Tom on there, Stepford Wives, All Three Stepfathers.
Well, what's great about it? Yeah, I'm gonna hit all the like obscure Amityville horror sequels.
Oh, nice!
Don't get us started on those.
1992. It's about time. Best one.
That I'm gonna hit that one because I've only seen up to part 3, so I'm gonna hit all those because Vinegar Syndrome put out that box set.
Yes,
and I've been meaning to pick that up.
My copy's coming in this week. I'm very patiently waiting ever since I bought it back in April.
I'm gonna take my chances and hit the halfway to Black Friday sale.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man, I'm so excited about that. I actually just got something from Vinegar Syndrome 2. It was kind of like a co-production with American Genre Film Archive and Bleeding Skull. It's called the McPherson Tape. It's billed as like the first found footage horror movie. And it's basically like this, this dude shot like a supposedly real alien abduction or sighting video. Like it kind of went around in a bunch of circles in the 90s as real alien abduction footage, although it's just a movie. But it does kind of capture kind of the stuff that would go on to make stuff like the Blair Witch a success. And actually, it also reminded me a lot of this Japanese found footage movie called Noroi: The Curse. Yeah, just basically this family's having a birthday party at night. They hear a crash. They go investigate. Looks like there's some aliens, and then it's just like them freaking out as like all kinds of crazy shit happens around the house.
Was it a TV movie?
No.
And when it was initially broadcast, because I remember there was a TV movie, I feel like it was called something like Incident in something county.
I think it was the sequel. I think the same director did another kind of found footage-ish alien abduction movie in the 90s, and that might have been it.
Because it was also a Thanksgiving dinner kind of thing too. It wasn't a birthday.
Yeah, I think he remade it. He basically remade it.
Okay, maybe that would make sense because it sounds like the same plot except birthday instead of Thanksgiving.
Yep.
But I remember it being a TV movie because it was one of those ones that freaked people out, kind of like Boggy Creek at the time. You know, it was the one, this is real.
Boggy Creek rules. That new restoration they did was absolutely beautiful and well worth the wait. To circle back to the Wretched and True History of the Kelly Gang, IFC has been incredibly cool with sending screening links out to critics right now. So they sent me a grip of screening links. Basically, they have a release coming out every week, which is kind of funny because while other studios are pushing their stuff, IFC is like, nope, we got it every week. And those are the last 2 weeks, The Wretched and True History of the Kelly Gang. And I have to say, I agree with pretty much everything you said about them. The Wretched is kind of like, it can't decide if it wants to be Goonies or The Conjuring, because it's kind of a coming of age thing with this kid, you know, in this new town, and he's, you know, out partying with his new friends, and then there's this shape-shifting monster witch thing that is, you know, there's more to it than just stealing kids though, but it's a pretty crazy the witch itself.
Oh my god,
the makeup
those effects
on the witch. Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy. That's the thing. It was the CG and practical effects were seamless. Like it really got you. I
was going to say that there's not that much. It didn't look to me like there was that much CG. It looked like it was all just old-fashioned practical effects.
It's a thing. I couldn't tell. That's how good it was.
And True History of the Kelly Gang is crazy because the first thing it says on screen is, so nothing you're about to see is true. So you pretty much know.
Here's the true story. It's not really true, guys.
Kind of. It is, because Ned Kelly is a real guy. Yeah. He's a real Australian bushwhacker. And I guess they pretty much tell you that we're making this up. But it's still, it's a lot of fun. And like Jacob said, there are some really fun shootouts in it. I don't know if the one he's talking about is, there are two main ones. I don't know which one he's talking about because they're both so far out there. It's a fun, it's hard to say it's a fun movie because it also ticks off every trigger warning. I mean, there's misogyny, there's animal abuse.
I was going to say a baby is interrogated at gunpoint. Yeah. I swear to God.
Yeah. There's everything in that. So if you're sensitive, you know, I mean, none of it's exploitive though. It's more, I mean, it's all pretty plot driven.
Yeah. It's just very gritty.
Yeah. That's what it is. It's just like it's actually a good grindhouse movie.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, would you guys say it's a good, harkens back to Ozploitation?
Oh, yes.
Era?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
So fans of Ozploitation will dig it. All right,
no
cool.
doubt.
I have to find it.
Yeah, and like I said, IFC really hit the nail on the head when they marketed this double feature as kind of more of a grindhouse throwback, because just really recaptured the spirit. And me and my friends were talking about it, and we were just thinking, this is how a lot of these types of movies were seen back in the 70s and 60s. The grindhouse stuff went to the drive-in.
It's a perfect drive-in double feature.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it really is. You could not have picked two better movies for a drive-in. So what else has been going on with what you guys have been seeing?
Yeah, Justin, what have you been watching on Tubi?
Well, yesterday I watched Inseminoid.
Ooh.
Yes.
Which I must say, I think it seemed a lot more promising than it was. It had a couple of it had a couple of interesting things, and I like the bold idea just to call a movie Inseminoid. So based on that, it gets some merit, but ultimately in execution, it was pretty, unimpressive. But then I watched the new Blu-ray, or I'm not sure how new it is, but I just picked it up because it was on sale, but of Poltergeist 3.
Yeah.
It's one of those things because I recently revisited the whole series on Blu-ray, and I must say, I think part 3 is my favorite, but that's only because I'm not really. I kind of find 1 and 2 just to be a bit of a mess. There's not really a lot of rules. It's kind of like, at any time, some weird, primitive CGI thing can come flying out of something at you, or you can think you're ripping off your face in the mirror or whatever. But I thought that part 3 was interesting because it's the only one that actually really establishes like clear rules as to the behavior of Kane and the spirits and the whole thing with the mirrors and the sort of Alice in Wonderland aspect of it. And I thought that was really interesting. So I thought they were actually going somewhere really interesting with it. Of course, everyone knows about the tragedy that happened that, of course, killed the end and kind of renders the movie not as effective. But I don't know. Up until the climax, it's pretty solid. I enjoyed revisiting it quite a bit.
Have you watched those Cursed Films series on Shudder? We just talked about that all last episode.
Yes.
Did you see the Poltergeist one?
I actually haven't watched that one yet. I got to I watched, the last one I watched was the Twilight Zone one.
You're going out of order then. Yeah, the Twilight Zone's is the last one. Yeah, did you get to The Crow?
I didn't know. No, I've just watched Exorcist and Twilight Zone, so I need to revisit.
Back on Poltergeist 3, I feel like it's very underrated too because like all those special effects were done in camera. It's crazy how how like magical like those effects are, and just like it was all practical, all in camera. And like the stuff they're able to do still blows my mind.
Totally, and that's you have Gary Sherman, at the helm for that, and of course he did Dead and Buried, and then it's got he also collaborated again with Joe Renzetti on the score, who also did the soundtrack for Dead and Buried. So I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, it was a lot. I found it to be a lot. The other ones are just so rooted in this weird sort of in between, like trying to be a Spielberg movie, but also trying to be a horror movie. And I thought that in part 3 is just a lot darker. And I just thought overall, it really knew what it was. Whereas I feel like Poltergeist 1 and 2 kind of suffer from, again, that like this trying like caught between being a horror movie and a Spielberg film. So
I've always been a champion for 3 because that was the one that caused me kinder trauma as a kid. Like especially the scene when she's running through the parking lot and then just
the puddle.
That gave me nightmares for the longest time. But I also saw it as a kid with no context to the other movies, so I haven't not seen them. So I just remember just being absolutely terrified by Kane and all that. And but yeah, revisiting them not too long ago, I definitely have more of an appreciation for 3 than most people. But yeah, and I can see why you also watched the Twilight Zone episode. You have a connection to some of that, right? Wasn't you produced Shakespeare Shitstorm, which was where Lloyd was for his interview.
Yeah, so actually I jumped to that one, and you're correct. I jumped to that one because there were some rumblings from some people who had worked on the film saying, hey, we never signed a Shudder release. What am I doing in the Shudder doc? And in reality, what happened was Troma owned that footage and Shudder licensed it, and so actually the footage legally was covered under Troma's standard behind-the-scenes release for the movie. But everyone was saying, "Oh, I didn't sign a Shudder release, so I had to like jump in and kind of look at everything." But
and you were looking for yourself in the background too.
I did look. I actually do remember. I knew I wasn't going to be in it because I remember distinctly I was hiding in the production office that day. That the Cursed Films guys were on set. Not because of that. Probably for something else. I can't remember exactly what, but I was bogged down at the PO.
I do remember a few other people I know who are on that production being like, "Wait, why am I in Cursed Films?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did see you in the background on some of the behind the scenes." Yeah, that's right. I have been pretty boring with my viewings recently. I will say I've been like hacking away at my have not watched Blu-rays, which include a lot of like early 2000s like spectacle films. Like I watched Reign of Fire, which 12-year-old me was very happy to finally watch. The CGI really holds up in that movie. So that's a positive.
Is that Christian Bale?
Yeah, it is. Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
McConaughey, yes.
And Gerard Butler rocking his actual Scottish accent, which was interesting. But yeah, the CGI was really good, so that's a positive thing I said about that. No, that movie I think is better than most people give it credit.
Yeah.
But I'm not here to talk about Reign of Fire. I'm here to talk about Border.
Oh, yes.
Now, I know we talked about Cats the other week, and we don't need to talk about Cats anymore. We need to stop talking about Cats. But I thought that was the horniest thing I've ever seen. And then I watched Border. And Border is, if you haven't seen it, it's a Swedish film about this woman who works at like the border and security, and she can smell people's emotions. And so she's really good at like...
She can smell guilt.
Yeah, she can smell guilt. She can smell shame. So, you know, when people are crossing the border with illegal stuff, you know, she can basically smell them feeling guilty. And she has like... physically she has like a big brow and kind of looks almost like
a Geico caveman,
like caveman facial
this
features.
Movie. Yeah, okay. I was pretending like I knew it.
And I'm purposely trying to not give as much away as possible, because going into this movie as blind as possible makes it such a treat, because it is such a fantastic and beautiful and yet dark and disturbing fairy tale. I have never felt so like compelled to see a romance play out in a movie and also be so disturbed by it. And so it was such a treat and such a what did I say the other day? I said it was such a treat and such a work. Like, it was so much work to get through, because you're just so drawn in and yet so repelled by some of the stuff that's in it. It's definitely... I've been recommending it to everyone. MoviePass now does this thing, or Movies Anywhere. MoviePass. Why did I say MoviePass? That's not a thing. That hasn't been a thing for a while. Movies Anywhere does Screen Pass now, so you can send people movie links and stuff, and that's one of the movies. So I've just been using all my Screen Passes to send Border to people, and I've had a few people write back to me angrily, being like, "Why the fuck did you send me this movie?" It is available on Hulu though, so highly recommend it to everyone out there. And yes, if you thought Cats was horny, you haven't seen Border. That will kill any sex drive you have.
It's a different kind of horny, though. It is
animalistic.
Wow. Yeah, no, I've been meaning to watch it ever since Aubrey Plaza, of all people, promoted the movie while doing an interview on Conan. Like, it was her favorite movie of the year.
She went on Conan with a clip for Border, but she has no connection to Border whatsoever. Like, she was not involved with the production, not involved with anything. She was just like, I really love this movie, and the people who made it let me give my look up the clip on YouTube. It's a great story she has about a failed screening for it. But also, she brought a clip of the movie to promote it, and they're like, "So why'd you bring it?" She's like, "I just really like this movie." So if you like Aubrey Plaza and understand her and or at least know her shtick or whatever, you can see why it's her favorite movie.
Cool. Anybody else see anything else? Can we move on? Let's move on. Let's start talking to Justin about himself. So you're a producer. How did you get started in the industry? I mean, you worked with Lloyd and Troma. That was your first gigs, right?
Yeah, that was my first gig right out of college. I went to school in New Hampshire at a liberal arts school called Franklin Pierce University. But anyway, I moved to New York right after college, and I'd always wanted to work for Troma. I'd been a big Troma fan since, as a kid, it was always sort of like ingrained in everything, because when I was 4 or 5 years old, Toxic Crusaders was a cartoon that was on TV, and Troma was a thing that sort of used to always come up. My local video store was sort of like prideful of the fact that they carried all the new Troma titles. So by the time I got old enough, I got into the Toxic Avenger, old enough being like, 13. I got into, Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High, and ended up going and I'd make my own movies in the backyard, and I would read Lloyd Kaufman's books as like my sort of like production guide, and met him at conventions and things like that. So it was something I always wanted to do. I always said I want to move to New York after college and work for Troma. And It was both a nightmare and a dream in that sense. So basically moved to New York, didn't know anyone at Troma, but went on the website, and it just so happened that they were looking for a new assistant to Lloyd Kaufman. The one at the time was leaving, and I applied, and then like 2 weeks later I was sitting at a desk at Troma. So
nice.
It was really incredible in that sense. That was 2009.
Do you have any particular favorite Troma movies?
Lloyd movies or distributed?
Just in general, whatever is the label.
I mean, of course, just, the evergreen titles. Toxic Avenger, Class of Nukem High. My favorite Lloyd movies, I would say, would be Tromeo and Juliet and Terror Firmer. So, and then in terms of like the distributed ones, Blood-Sucking Freaks, Surf Nazis Must Die, Redneck Zombies. I love all the evergreen stuff, and there are of course also some gems in deep within that 1,000 title catalog. The last horror film with Joe Spinell. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that's an incredible one. Yep, I highly recommend that one. In fact, I'm not even going to say anything else. I'm just going to leave it at that in terms of deep cuts.
That's Carolyn Monroe as well, right? It's basically a Maniac reunion?
Pretty much.
In the last, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Watching Joe Spinell anytime is great, but he is really good in that one as well. And a lot of recent Troma titles are great. BC Butcher was one that always that surprised me a few years ago.
Kansas Bowling. Yeah, that was great. There's still, and then of course right now the Troma movie that's making the rounds at festivals and everything and just dropped on Troma now is Mutant Blast. And that I highly recommend that one. That's a lot of fun. That was made by Fernando Allais, not L.A. Allais. And he's from Portugal. And he actually was one of the people. So when I produced, basically long story short, and this is a good segue, I ended up, by 2012, I produced Return to Nukem High Volumes 1 and 2, which was a reboot of the Class of Nukem High franchise. And when we shot them in Niagara Falls, Buffalo, New York. And when you do a Troma movie, it's pretty incredible because essentially they're paying inexperience for a lot of people. So people come from all over the world to get the experience of working on the Troma movie. And Fernando was one of those people who came and worked on Return to Nukem High and then ended up making this incredible zombie, post-apocalyptic, mutant, gross-out movie, Mutant Blast. And I think it took him like 7 years to do, but it just came out, and I highly recommend it. It's the brand new Troma movie. Check that out.
Yeah, definitely.
Put on the top of the watch list.
Now, you say Troma Now. Is that their streaming platform?
Yeah, it's the same thing as like Full Moon's streaming thing, and yeah.
Aren't all the Troma movies on like YouTube and stuff, or did they pull them down? I remember Lloyd used to not seem to have a problem with the stuff being readily available for free. Has that changed since Troma Now?
I haven't gone through and seen what titles remain on YouTube versus which are exclusive to Troma Now. I do think that some have come down from YouTube, but Lloyd also started that in a time before YouTube had totally like changed all the monetization policies and stuff. So Troma was actually making some money off of having like a large portion of the catalog on YouTube. But now that that's changed, a lot of it's been demonetized due to content restrictions, among other things. So it just made sense for Troma to move in, as well as they had a lot of movies I think pulled off of Amazon as a result of content restrictions. So I think at this point it just made sense for Troma to move into having a dedicated streaming service.
Well, why not? Everybody's got their own.
Exactly.
I just thought it was curious that Troma seemed to be the one studio that you could always find the movies on YouTube. And it didn't seem like, I remember Adam Green said something that Lloyd didn't seem to care that people could access his movies for free because he made money selling action figures and T-shirts and stuff. But Adam Green's whole point to that was, yeah, but you're established. Think of these new filmmakers who can't sell their movie, and it became a big stink that we probably don't want to get into here. But I remember Lloyd never seemed to have a problem with people being able to access the actual movies for free.
Yeah, he's I think long been a proponent of the idea that some bootlegging may be a good thing, and if it allows somebody in a country somewhere where Troma movies don't have any distribution to see the films, I think he's happy for that. And then, like you said, Troma is an established brand. So if people are bootlegging the movies, they can't bootleg T-shirts, they can't bootleg action figures and things like that. So there's still revenue coming in. And of course, Adam Green was right from, I know him as well, and he was right from his perspective.
Oh no, I'm actually vehemently anti-piracy.
Oh yeah, I pretty much lean in that direction as well.
But I also understand Lloyd's point of view because he's made it. Troma, like you said, it's an established brand. So, why does he care if people are downloading the Toxic Avenger? Who hasn't seen that already?
Exactly. And if anybody really wants to, and if anybody wants to go deeper, they'll of course purchase the Blu-ray or something with special features and all that. So
Troma fans are loyal like that too. I think, even if they do discover it on YouTube, they're going to go out and buy it.
And Troma packs their discs. I mean, I remember when Poultrygeist first came out, I was so excited after that Heavy Metal trailer, and I ended up getting like the 3-disc DVD that I still haven't gotten back from my high school teacher, but whatever. But they were just it was so informative, and there was so much in there. Like, he really, Lloyd and all of them do a really good job of kind of like giving back to the fans on like, this is how this was made, this is how we made it, this is how we dyou this. And I always thought that was really cool. It was always like a mini filmmaking lesson going through those special features.
Well, the special features, have you guys seen, I think it's a 4-disc Father's Day set?
Yes, I got that.
I mean, who needs 4? And I guess one of them soundtrack disc. Yeah, I was gonna say I do. One of them, I guess, is a soundtrack disc. But yeah, 4 discs for Father's Day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is awesome.
Now, Justin, you're also producing Joe Bob, right? And you've
Yes.
been on it since the beginning
Since the beginning, yes.
reboot.
Yes. So my producing partner Matt Mangiariti. So I met at Troma now 10 years ago. He had actually had the idea to do a sort of a Joe Bob revival show back when we worked at Troma. In fact, the original idea was to do like a thing of Joe Bob watching Troma movies. But, Lloyd and Michael, God bless them, they see the vision for some things. Other times they don't quite see the vision. So they didn't see the vision with doing a Joe Bob thing. That's fine. Because, it left the door open to doing this. So then however many years later, 2017, 2018, we approached Shudder about doing a one-off marathon. And that was the original marathon that everybody knows about that crashed the Shudder service.
Broke the internet.
And all that. That broke the internet. And it's interesting because it kind of gets called season 1 now, I think, on Shudder itself. But in reality, that was a continuous marathon that ran, all night. And yeah, we filmed that in a little studio in New Jersey, kind of with like a ramshackle 3-camera setup. And, it was like, we tried to do, like the set we tried to make, like, Joe Bob's earlier, like Joe Bob's drive-in set, like the interior set with the armchair and everything. Now, of course, we have our sort of recreation of the Monster Vision set. But the original one was to do Joe Bob's drive-in theater, sort of interior with the recliner. Anyway, I digress. So we thought that was going to be a one-time event. Like, okay, this is cool, great. And then pretty soon after the whole marathon broke the internet thing, Shudder wanted to talk about doing a series. And here we are. We're in the middle of season 2, which I guess is season 3 if you count the marathon, but technically season 2.
Yeah, just saw Maniac the other day.
How'd you like it with Tom? Was that fun?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man, it was great. Like hearing all that behind the scenes stuff, and somebody was noting online, just Tom talking about all the violations he did in order to film the scene with the shotgun blast. Yeah, no, like the interviews have been great, and it's a great way to watch movies for the first time. Like that was actually the first time I'd ever seen Maniac.
I must confess that I hadn't seen it before doing this season either. It was one of those ones that had escaped me.
Have either of you seen the remake?
Yes, I'd seen the remake, but I hadn't seen the original.
That's incredible, Jacob. That's your homework. You have to track down the Elijah Wood Maniac remake.
Now, you guys pick such great movies to show, and it really does do some like deep cuts. But what is the process of picking titles? I know definitely you being the go-to man when it comes to Tiny Tim. You know, you wrote the book. You wrote Tiny Tim's biography, so of course you had to do Blood Harvest one episode, which was an awesome episode. I love hearing more about that production because that was such a weird movie. But
it is.
Wait, time out though. Did you really write the Tiny Tim biography?
I did, yes. I wrote the official
Nice.
biography on Tiny Tim, which is it's funny where all these things sometimes intersect. And not planned, and obviously it intersecting with Joe Bob by way of Blood Harvest was just wonderful synergy.
Out of curiosity, how big of a chapter was Blood Harvest in the book?
It's not huge because there wasn't really a tremendous amount of available information. Tiny only talked about it. I mean, you have the movie to look at. Tiny talked about it a little bit. There's a little bit of behind the scenes material. I interviewed director Bill Rebane about it. But even his memory was a little shoddy. So, it's a decent sized chapter, but and definitely will tell you more than you would find just like by Googling.
You call him Tiny, not Tim. You call him Tiny?
Tiny, yeah.
Nice.
Or Mr. Tim.
Mr. Tim? So Tim's his last name?
For all intents and purposes, but his real name was Herbert Corey was his real name.
But that's very interesting because, you do produce Joe Bob and you are, the author of Tiny Tim's biography. You would think that it would be like a go-get, like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to do a Blood Harvest episode someday, but it doesn't sound like that was the case. Like, it just kind of happened. But what was the process of that episode coming about, and how you guys picked the titles for Joe Bob?
So in that sense, when we did the original marathon, we picked entirely from titles that were on Shudder. And that was because again that we did that was sort of like a little bit of a lower budget thing. Now that we are in proper production with Shudder, we are able to either pick from the titles that Shudder has available, but we also like to give people a bit of a surprise because one of the things that the Drive-In Mutants have started to do is predict the titles based on what's on Shudder. So we've also now we've gotten into a good position, and Shudder's been great with also allowing us to request titles. And as long as it's not something that's absolutely astronomically expensive to license, they're able to do it. So now that's what we've been able to do, and we've been started to do more of that. I think that as we continue on, we might be seeing a thing of half newly licensed titles that haven't dropped on Shudder prior to the episode, and then half titles that have already been on there for some time. And then in terms of something like Blood Harvest, that was just it was just a moment of serendipity that Vinegar Syndrome had bought Blood Harvest, and they had made a number of their titles available to Shudder. And I didn't, of course, know Joe Rubin and the guys at Vinegar Syndrome, so I said we have to do Blood Harvest, and I'll be the guest because it doesn't cost anything, so let's do it. And we hit the real clincher with the Blood Harvest episode was the fact that I'd been sitting on that bit of footage that we showed of Tiny Tim watching Blood Harvest for the first time. And I'd been sitting on that for 10 years. That was recorded by a prominent Timophile. I call the big Tiny Tim fans Timophiles. A prominent Timophile named Ben Roth had that piece of footage of Tiny sitting on a couch drinking beer, watching Joe Bob show Blood Harvest in 1994. And I sent that footage to Joe Bob, and he's like, this is so many levels. I think he said it on the show. It's so many levels of fucked up or whatever he said. And so we had, because of that piece of footage, that really sealed the deal. We just had to do that episode.
I think it's really cool that a lot of Vinegar Syndrome titles are in there because a lot of their stuff is more obscure and it's getting out there. One of my favorites that you did on the last drive-in was Demon Wind, just because that movie is so buck fucking sane. And that's the thing, it's a huge boost to any movie that screens on the last drive-in, because after that a lot of people became fans. A lot of people were talking about it, and that just goes for any movie that gets screened on Last Drive-In. It's like a magnifying glass.
Yeah, well, it's important. I think Joe Bob and what Joe Bob said to me when after we finished filming the segments for Blood Harvest, and we were sitting on the set, Joe Bob turned to me and he said, I'm really happy we decided to go this deep for something like Blood Harvest, because it's an oddity or a curio that most people would just write off and be like, oh yeah, it's this weird movie, Tiny Tim's running around and dressed up as a clown, whatever. But to actually take movies like Blood Harvest or A Demon Wind or something like that, or a Spookies. Not that we've done it, I would love to, but and really and really examine it with a magnifying glass is what keeps these movies alive, and now I think will keep them relevant to a new audience again, because it's so easy to have a title like that just get lost among a bunch of other obscure titles from that era. So to take them and really dive into the behind the scenes stories of them, which oftentimes can be more interesting than 90% of the movie itself, I think is an important thing to do, and that's one of the important things of The Last Drive-In.
What's one of your dream titles to have? What's on your wish list for The Last Drive-In?
Well, I'd love to do Spookies, as I mentioned.
There you go.
Yes.
Jacob's a big fan.
I do love me some Spookies.
Yeah, I'd love to do Spookies.
Now, Justin, you not only produce Joe Bob, but you also produce a number of other films. Like we talked about, you produce with Troma. You have Shakespeare Shitstorm coming up, of course. And you have some other titles coming up. Like you guys recently remade Castle Freak.
Yes.
Right? Definitely want to hear more about that.
Well, so for the last couple of years, I've been building a business just basically doing production services in Eastern Europe. And one of the places that we'd focused on was Albania as an emerging territory. So we actually first sort of beta tested everything by bringing Troma to Albania and filming sequences for Shakespeare Shitstorm, because they had some very ambitious boat sequences out in the ocean, and we were able to do some really great work with the Albanian Navy. It was really cool. So looking forward for people to see that. And then that got us talking, of course, with Dallas Sanye and everybody at Cinestate and Fangoria, and they wanted to remake Castle Freak, and they said, well, can you find a castle in Albania? And I said, absolutely. So that set us in the course, and last summer we shot the remake of Castle Freak in a beautiful castle in southern Albania that's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's completely different from the original, I will say. So I don't know how much I can give away, but it's completely different from the original, and one of the big things I would say is that it has a castle, unlike the original.
Ooh.
I was about to say the castle is very important because, it's half the title.
Yes.
But
Does it have a freak in it, though?
It has a castle and it has a freak, and but that was my big thing that I said, okay, you know what? My principal role here was I got us to Albania, I got the castle. Now, if anybody says anything about the movie, I'll just say, was there a castle? Because I did my job. It was a castle.
I did want to ask on the subject if you can talk about Shakespeare Shitstorm, because like I said before, love Romeo and Juliet, and on a personal level, Shakespeare's The Tempest is my favorite Shakespearean play. So I'm very interested in seeing how it gets traumatized, because I think out of a lot of his plays, like that one's had so many kind of out there adaptations, because Forbidden Planet, that was an adaptation, and then you had Julie Taymor's adaptation a decade ago. So yes, this it does even from the title alone, it does sound like it's going to be traumatized, and frankly, I'm here for it.
Well, it's funny because it's one of those things where you don't think of it, but obviously Lloyd Kaufman doing Shakespeare actually works very well, because it's one of those things where though Lloyd makes the movies that he makes, his influences aren't really rooted in other horror movies. His influences are rooted in literature such as Shakespeare. And then Laurel and Hardy sketches, and then like Stan Brakhage. You know what I mean? Those are the things that actually influence his filmmaking. And what I will say, as I think you will enjoy, I'm actually really proud of it. This would be my 4th feature film for Troma, and I came back after being gone for 5 years to do it because I love the script so much, and I knew it was going to be something special. And while we did return to Nukem High, those were something completely different. I think they were a little bit more experimental. We kind of let pretty much anybody who walked into the office run with an idea, and if it looked good, we put it in the movie. And it was, I don't want to say it was like, you know, we were rebooting. We were kind of treading on familiar territory, and Lloyd was rebooting a previous, you know, an already established franchise within the Troma universe. But with Shakespeare Shitstorm, I don't think he would mind me saying that I saw him inspired in a way that I had never seen before when we were working together. And I could tell that it was a highly personal project for him. He plays 2 roles in the movie, which you might have noticed from the trailer, male and female. I mean, and that was the other big thing. I mean, for 73, 74 years old, he was directing, executive producing, and playing 2 roles, flying to Albania and shooting. Then we shot the rest of the movie in New York. So, I mean, it was really inspiring to watch him on this one. And I really think that all of that comes through in the final cut. So I really think you will enjoy it. I am very proud of it. One of the hurdles, though, I think, has been getting people to look at it just based on the title alone, you know. But I think right now we're looking at, you know, I won't say which festival, but there are a lot of festivals right now that are talking about doing summer premieres, summer like online premieres with like online screenings that will be like limited to certain regions and capped at a certain number of people. And we're leaning towards doing some of that. And, you know, I wouldn't have been receptive to something like that previously if not for what I've seen with The Last Drive-In and basically the like sort of online happening that happens, you know, when the show airs live every week. And we've been talking about and saying, well, Troma has such a dedicated fan base, we can easily do something like that for Shakespeare Shitstorm. So you may be able to see it sooner rather than later.
Well, and that's one of the big questions I wanted to ask you today, because I mean, obviously we've been in this coronavirus shutdown for a while. It hasn't really changed the format of our show too much, but as you can tell, we record over Skype and all that. But you have the unique perspective of being a producer for multiple things, whether it's you know, a streaming TV show. So I'm sure Joe Bob you've seen the difference in viewership pre and post, or not, we're not post pandemic yet, but during, and seeing like the boost there. But also you have a few movies, whether it's, you know, Shakespeare's Shitstorm, Castle Freak, or your Tiny Tim documentary, which I'm super excited for. Those films haven't gotten a release yet, or were going to be released soon. But now, how is like COVID and everything affected, you know, overall your different titles that are coming out?
Well,
with release strategy.
I mean, I'm fortunate enough to not be, for all of these titles, I'm fortunate enough to not be like so entirely tied into the distribution end or financing end of the projects that I'm like shitting my pants about what COVID has done, you know, in terms of distribution. That said, of course, I want the movies to succeed, and I think, I mean, it's just been, honestly, it's about just finding the silver lining in the current situation. And then the silver lining is, yeah, I mean, while you want to have the big premiere at a reputable festival with a bunch of people in the audience, and you want to have that audience sort of, especially with a Troma movie, like a Troma movie plays so much better to a theater full of people than like a handful of people sitting at home watching something. But on the other hand, I guess the quarantine situation has sort of highlighted the fact that we are capable of creating an actual online happening and a significant digital footprint for a movie or a project without people having to go to the theater to see it. Now, I don't think we should continue doing this after, and that's something that I think the world and humanity is going to have to look at when this whole thing is done. But in terms of making the best of the situation, it's just great that we have things like Twitter to help things trend, and we can, again, create an online happening. So I'm excited and interested to see how these movies that I've done, that we're now talking about doing these online digital premieres for, will play. Because I think it technically means more eyes on them, I guess, is the roundabout way, the point I'm trying to make.
Now that's with distribution. How do you think production is going to be handled after this? I mean, there's got to be some safety guide. You and I both work in the industry, so we're going to see a lot of changes. You're definitely going to have to be dealing with it. Well, I don't know. I'm a coordinator, so I think we're going to see it on two different levels, definitely. But how do you see productions kind of dealing with safety guidelines and even coming back in the near future?
Right. Well, I think we talked about that proposal for some of the things that was like a 2-week quarantine prior to, and a cap on a certain amount of crew. And I don't know how realistic any of that is. I mean, I think that the best you could do is have a limited crew and until this thing is over. And I think that's it. I mean, what do you think? How can it, we could talk about these things that are like great ideas. Right. Okay, 2-week quarantine prior to shooting, but people have to work. So someone's not working for 2 weeks prior to making a few bucks on this shoot for a week.
But also, are they getting paid?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay them for that 2 weeks.
Right, exactly.
You would think.
Well, because I mostly work in reality. I'm not ashamed to say that, It allows me to travel, and I get paid decently. So when I think about it, it's like, oh, well, so to shoot this, TLC type show that's shooting in like Kentucky or whatever. So we're gonna have to go to Kentucky, take over a hotel in a small town, and then for 2 weeks we sit around. So do we that's kind of cool for me, because as a coordinator, you go there 2 weeks, you're in quarantine, I can get a lot of work done in pre-production. But are we paying crew during that 2 weeks? Are we paying per diem during that 2 weeks? Like, there's a lot of costs with that. Is it going to be worth making these, not cheap, but lower cost type shows at that? Is it going to change how we do stuff on staging? I mean, obviously, people are talking about having separate new positions being made to make sure everything is kind of disinfected at the end of each day. I mean, there's definitely a step up in responsibility when it comes to safety. We're not only thinking about stuff falling on people's heads, we're also thinking about invisible pathogens coming through and stuff. But it's going to be a weird world coming out, and I think it's both going to be on a large scale and small scale, because I already see a lot of crew members worried about how the crafty table is going to be looking after this, Well,
from a producer standpoint, I just say get rid of the crafty table. That would be my solution.
And as someone who doesn't do grocery shopping because they work all the time on set, I say no, because I need to be everyone just gets Welch's grape, fruit snacks, and that's it.
There you go. Love it. Peanuts and fruit snacks. Done.
Yeah, individually bagged peanuts and Welch's fruit snacks. I mean, honestly, that's how I get through the day. So.
Maybe some Uncrustables. I think those could stay.
But it's not craft services without cookies. There's got to be some cookies.
All right. We'll get some Lorna Doone. Throw that in there.
But see, this is how it goes, and then someone will go, "Oh yeah, but you can't have Crafty without breakfast. We gotta have breakfast in the morning. Crafty has to make breakfast."
But to your point, man, honestly, I haven't even thought about it that in depth. I've only thought about it to the extent was that I looked at that proposal, and I'm sorry, the two producers who proposed it escaped my mind. But I looked at that proposal, and I just said, well, I don't know how that is going to work for. I mean, it's not going to work for an indie movie or an indie thing. I mean, maybe a big network can pay people to be in quarantine for 2 weeks prior to shooting. I used to work like you. I worked in reality TV. I worked for Teen Mom off and on for several years. And I know they could do something like that, afford to pay people to be in quarantine for 2 weeks prior. But doing a Troma movie, or something like that, or even, or quite frankly, even The Last Drive-In. That's not happening, so I don't know. I honestly don't know. I will have to look at it and sort of deal with it as it comes.
But even then, when it comes to, we talk about how we've been talking about this is people doing it right, is trying to do the best for people's health and safety. But we're already seeing, with so many shows that are still going on right now, they're shifting from shooting on stage to, shooting at home. There's some late night shows or daytime shows that are doing that. And I've been hearing stories. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to get in trouble, but there's already some that are taking the quick cuts and, they furlough their union normal crew and they're bringing in non-union crews at like a much lower pay for longer hours and stuff, and are not going about it in like the best way possible with that. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting world to kind of come out in. I think production wise to see who abides by it. I mean, hell, I saw like a small crew shooting outside of my apartment the other night, and while I love seeing people create, especially it was just, you could tell it was like a small crew. It's just like friends making something together. So part of me was like, yeah, dude, get out there, get creative. But also the other part of me was, we're in fucking quarantine. Go the fuck home, guys. Like, be safer about this. It's definitely that push and pull of safety. You want to do everything safe, but you also want to be able to create. So it'll be whether your motivation to create is financial or for the art. But yeah,
you said it. It will be interesting. Yeah,
it's hard to predict whether or not we'll be able to pull off something like that proposal, or if there'll be like a kind of middle ground thing, or we're not even close to the end of it.
Yeah. Well, Justin, thank you very much for spending your Sunday with us and answering some of our biting questions.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'll come back anytime.
Yeah.
Our theme song is by Restless Spirit. So they've, I'm sure, been hit hard by this coronavirus because that's a band that's always on the road. So go check them out. Our artwork is by Chris Fisher. And I don't know what's going on with him, but he's probably been hit hard too. He's always making movies and stuff. Where can we find you on the social medias, Justin? Do you have like a Twitter or something that people can find you?
Sure, you can watch The Last Drive-In every Friday at 9 p.m. only on Shudder. Premiere dates for Shakespeare Shitstorm and Castle Freak will be announced soon. You can also check out my record label, Ship to Shore Phonoco, for the latest and classic reissues, undiscovered gems, and video game soundtracks at shiptoshoremedia.com. And for anything and everything Tiny Tim related, visit godblessstinytim.com.
Nice. What about you, Jacob? Where can people find you on the socials?
You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Davison _. That is at JACOB DAVISON _. And my first episode just dropped for the Parcast audio network with Haunted Places. So check that out if you can.
Cool. And you, Korea?
Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIAN BBQ. But yeah, you can also find me on iHorror Stardust. I know I keep promising to post more and I keep forgetting. I really should. It's only 30-second videos. But yeah, you can definitely find me there as well. Little quick reviews. And and I post all the time on our Facebook for Eye on Horror.
Yes. 9 times out of 10, it's Korea doing the posting there.
That's why it's mostly GIFs.
Me, you can find on Twitter at CinemaFierite. That's like verite, but with fear, so it's FEARITE. And you can find all three of us at the Eye on Horror Twitter. That's at Eye on Horror. At the Eye on Horror Facebook page, or at the iHorror Facebook page, or at iHorror.com, because that's where we all call home. And so, Justin, thank you again for hanging out with us and answer some questions. And we will see you guys all in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Korea.
Keep your eye on horror.